big part of it is that, the plot thickens, but it's a good thing. The more you win, the bigger the reward. So we are extremely proud of the way our guys handle themselves in the Florida A&M deal. It's one of those kind of games where you didn't know exactly where those guys were coming from. They did do some things, a good bit of things differently on defense, but we eventually got a grip on some things and got to run the ball pretty good. From that point on, we were okay, but up to that point, we were, struggling a little bit. And, that's been kind of the usual for our team. We're still trying to make our offense go in a more consistent manner, but at the same time, it is what it is, and we do still try to find our way. Now, done. Questions?
All right. Coach, what jumps out to you about Morgan? I know they're coming off a pretty tough loss, and seemed to be kind of an aberration for the way their season was going.
Had no idea that the game would turn out the way it did with them and A&T. A&T's got that kind of ability. They can big play a good bit, and I think they kind of got in a situation where they were on the road. A&T had a couple big plays. They got a turnover too. The next thing they knew, they were 21-0 down. They were down 31-0 at the half. And from that point, it was pretty much done. That surprised me as much as anything because up to that point, they have been really sound on defense. They do a nice job of keeping things in front of you. They don't necessarily come after you a bunch. They are a 11 eyes on the ball style kind of defense, and they also have been a team that has been able to control the football enough where they don't put a lot of stress on their defense because they keep the football away from you some. They can really run the football, but getting behind, it was kind of like the old option teams. If you get them far enough behind early, they don't really have an answer because, they want to try to, methodically work the football down the field, and that's kind of works against your process in a situation where you're behind big.
Coach, the defense has kind of been like the saving grace all season, and we had our best performance probably in the conference with almost 500 yards total offense, and Colleague had a pretty solid performance. Do you think he's kind of finding his way at this point?
So. It'd be nice if that was the case. You see some of the old and some of the new as you go about evaluating his game from this past Saturday. He had a couple of turnovers. One turnover on the former deal was more on the center than anything else, and it was the perfect storm of sorts because Scoop was going the exact wrong direction, so he couldn't get back on it. And then the turnover on the interception was one where if you go back to the interception that he threw in preseason practice when he just kind of stood there and watched it this time, he was the last guy. If he doesn't make that tackle, then that guy scores. And the fact that he got himself over in a position to make the tackle, I was proud of than anything. So, I'm looking forward to seeing where he is this week. He was better last week than he was previously. Let's hope that the light has come on for him and he is going to kind of move around a little bit better, do some things better. He's already one of the better guys at getting us in the right stuff, understanding protections, being able to check, being able to call pass protection, that kind of stuff. So if we can get him to do some other things at the same level at his mental approach to the game, I think we might have something.
Coach, I know a couple times I've heard you talk about being in control of your own destiny for the playoffs, for the conference. The number's down to 2. Is that any added pressure for you guys?
Well, it is. As they get smaller, they get bigger. But the best part about it is you continue to be successful. And it's a lot of fun this time of the year, having something to play for. And the fact that we are, in charge of the league right now as far as the tiebreakers are concerned, is good for us. So. I think our kids, we got a bunch of guys upstairs right now, just sitting around watching tape, that kind of stuff. They're hanging around I think the kids are really excited about it and want to be, conference champs that way. So I think it's all good.
Coach, you said you said preseason that Scoop was back with a vengeance. He's 5 yards away from 1,000. First 1,000-yard rusher since Will Ford in 2009.
Is that right? It's been that long.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about Scoop.
Well, he's been that guy for us, the style of guy who goes out and earns everything he gets. And you know, for a guy to sit out for a year the way he did and get himself back to full speed and to come back this past spring and do what he's done, you know, has been a marvelous deal to watch, you know, as far as what he's done and, you know, the kind of year he's had. And nobody's more deserving. He's a great leader, you know, he's all the kind of stuff that you want to have as far as being a player and as a total student athlete's concerned. So I'm real proud of him and excited for him and looking forward to seeing him break that 1,000-yard deal. And, you know, from there, you know, I'm hoping he can get a bunch more. Hopefully what's happened is we found something that's going to give him an opportunity to get some big yards from this point. But, you know, the best part about it is the fact that he looks like he is going to break 1,000. He doesn't have very far to go.
You talked about being in control of your destiny with the 2 number in the playoffs and the guys being excited about it. I guess, how much do you talk about that and how much do you have to compartmentalize it, I guess, you know, getting ready for the next game?
Not a bunch, but the big thing we talk about is that next game. It's always directed toward the task at hand. Anytime you have some things to do, it's best to kind of emphasize that one thing that, you know, that you can really have the most impact on at that time. So we don't talk much about the championship. We do talk about how it all plays into the formula, but the bottom line is it's all about Morgan and trying to figure out how we go about getting the best approach to that particular situation. And you know, we just go from there.
Coach, your key word all season has been sense of urgency.
Yeah.
And on defense, you know, you're looking at the 2 deep. These young guys are playing a remarkable season. Talk a little about some of those guys.
We got a bunch of young guys, you know, on our defensive side of the ball that just kind of keep showing up. And, you know, they're new faces, some, you know, guys that are transfers and that kind of stuff. But we got a lot of guys who really do seem to have a bright future in front of them. I'm trying to pull this depth chart up here so I can maybe talk about these guys in a way where I can hit on them here. Let's see. Is that it right there?
There you go.
Okay, good. Okay, let's see. Let's start out at the top. I'm gonna talk about the defensive line a bit because you got Greg Newell, you know, who's a freshman redshirt from Atlanta. You know, is in the same kind of mold of the Glovers and the Carters of the world, kind of that size guy. Will get bigger and stronger. He's only about 215, 220 right now, but he really does run to the football well. He does that. There's a play in the game Saturday where they hit a little screen ball out on the side, and he comes from the backside defensive end and makes the tackle. You know, he's one of those kind of guys. And then at the linebackers, you got Darius Leonard and Deshaun Taylor. Deshaun has really started to come on in a way now where, you know, he's becoming more dependable. He runs around real good. He's not quite as fast as Darius, but let me tell you what, those guys, those 2 young guys, you know, in the formula, you know, will really be, you know, I think the future of our program. The best part about it though is that, you know, the Brocks and the Tyler Smiths of the world aren't very old. Those guys are sophomores, and you know, we'll lose Justin Hughes out of that formula next year, but all the rest of those guys will be back, and you know, you get a nice mix of size and speed with those guys, and they're all great guys. They're good students, both Darius Leonard and Deshaun Taylor, over 3.0 students. So our academic guy yesterday, Mr. Eric Seifert, came by to talk about some of the academic averages and the recognition from the conference yesterday. And both those guys were guys that were recognized yesterday. That whole crew, almost Tyler Smith, Tevin Rich, all those guys are great students. So, you know, it's a good group of guys that way. And then, you know, in our secondary, you know, Chris Paul is the guy that you really hear the most about. But now he's a redshirt guy. Chris has got this year and 1 more year to play for, so he's got 2 more years. He's got 1 more year. The rest of that crowd, the Philip Henry didn't play last year, Antonio Hamilton didn't play last year, you know, Marquise Jones, then Carlos Barrett's a freshman, you know, that whole crew, Buddy Pough, you know, all those guys, you know, are new this year to the defense in a way where, you know, they make you wonder, you know, if you got the right to think that you ought to have this kind of success with as many new guys you got in the home. And we got those standbys, you know, Glover and Hargrave, those guys, Settles, Reggie Owens, all those guys around. up front, Justin Hughes and linebacker, but that whole secondary is almost totally new. So, I'm really proud of the fact that our defensive staff has done the job they have. Tommy Restivo, has done a fantastic job of continuing to develop this defense, and he's the guy who's actually working with the secondary himself, and Ben Barton with the linebackers, and Blanchard, Saxon, Coach Harris, all those guys were the up front guys. So we've got a great group of coaches and players working together to make that defensive side of the ball go in a way that I don't know if I thought could be, at the beginning of the year, because I really thought that we have some growing pains with all the youth that we had infused into the style of play.
We were talking about a stat, Coach, before you walked in here. It's been 40 years since State has lost up at Morgan. I understand you were on that team.
Somebody told me that. Is that right? Yeah. It's been that long since I played, huh? It seemed like yesterday. Yeah, well, hopefully I won't be on the team that was, I don't want to box in those two losses. So we got our work cut out for us. And Morgan, I'm going to be honest with you, Lee Hall and his crew, you can see the difference in Morgan's football team's excitement that they're beginning to build. And that's why last week's game was such a big surprise to us, because I just didn't see that. And I'm sure that'll be their main focus this week, of redeeming themselves from having that rough game this past Saturday. But as you build programs, you have those kind of ups and downs sometimes. And, we're hoping that we don't necessarily go in there and think that that's the case, as far as what kind of team they are, because this is a much better football team than what you saw on Saturday. And, we got to find our way into, getting through this thing so that we can keep our string going here.